I can speak now to Dr. Vali Aslam, who is Associate Professor in International Relations and Asian Security Studies at the University of Bath, to talk more about the geopolitical repercussions of all of this. Dr. Aslam, thank you very much for your time today. Let's begin with what the US is saying, what Joe Biden, the president, is saying, placing a lot of the blame for this on the Afghan government and Afghan forces as well. The manner in which he has spoken, what does this mean for what's going to happen next with Afghanistan? You know, given that the US is pulling out, other Western forces are pulling out, can they now bring any influence to bear on the situation that unfolds there, or is that opportunity completely gone?
Well, the first part of the question, Joe Biden is partly correct that, of course, the Afghan political and military leadership has a lot to answer. But on the other side, the West has a lot to answer as well. For example, the West was pumping a lot of money and wasting a lot of lives into a project that was fundamentally flawed, as we saw that it took just a matter of days for the Afghan forces to disappear. So that is one thing. But next, looking forward to the future of Afghanistan, I think it will have to be a story of both sides. So in the last 20 years or so, we have seen the Taliban have learned the art, or have at least paid attention to the art of diplomacy and making linkages with Russia and China. And they have flown to all sorts of destinations. And it is no wonder that Russia and China have already started talking in positive terms. And the Taliban are keen to make good linkages with Iran and India as well. And similarly, the West will come back to recognizing some kind of a Taliban emirate in the future, I would think, depending on their record on human rights, which is the one key aspect that, the West is really keen on. So the West will have to work with the future Taliban government, and there are different leverages they can use. For example, in the last 20 years, we have seen that the government in Afghanistan has been very dependent on foreign donations. And that is one key leverage that the Taliban would like to have. The Taliban would like more foreign donations in the future, and the West can use that leverage to influence the Taliban, especially on human rights.
You mentioned Russia, and it's been reported that we know that the Russian embassy remains open in Kabul, and that the Russian ambassador will be having talks with senior Taliban officials today, we're told. China has also been talking about relations with a Taliban-led government. So are we going to see a split opening up here, potentially?
I don't necessarily think that there will be a split as such. I think there will emerge a consensus among the great powers that, like it or not, the Taliban is the only party that we can talk to. There is no other civilian partner in Afghanistan, unfortunately, as we have seen that the civilian government that was there before the Taliban just crumbled away. So I would like to think that there will emerge a consensus in the coming weeks with regard to how to engage with the Taliban. I think the split might happen in the slightly longer term, when the global rivalry between the US and the West in one camp and China in the other camp, that can superimpose itself on the case of Afghanistan. And of course, the Taliban are aware of that they will at some point be forced, or might be forced, to choose sides. And they will be asked to join either the Chinese camp or the American camp. And then the split might be much more apparent, but that might be in the longer run.
On a more limited scale, will there need to be talks in the short term between the likes of the US, the UK, other Western nations and the Taliban, in order to get people who want to leave Afghanistan out of there? And of course, that will be one of the tests for the Taliban for this new administration. Will it allow everyone who wants to go to leave?
I think the talks have been taking place already for a number of years. And hopefully when the records come out in 20, 30 years, we'll find out that the transition was more managed than we think it was. I think that relatively quiet departure of Ashraf Ghani and relatively less violent takeover of Kabul by the Taliban, I would like to think that there has been a lot more management going on behind the scenes than we think. And of course, this this conversation will have to continue if the Taliban have to engage with the rest of the international community in basic day-to-day matters like the ones that you have mentioned.
Dr. Aslam, thank you very much for your thoughts today. Dr. Vali Aslam, Associate Professor in International Relations and Asian Security Studies at the University of Bath.
Thank you.
If you want to get in